People who bought a house. What is the weirdest thing you have found left by the previous owner? First time I took a hot shower in our new home. The steam covered the mirror only to reveal the phrase, "Hello, I see you" in large finger-drawn writing. It freaked me out for a second, but made me laugh soon after that. It was such an inconspicuous yet obvious thing to leave for the new homeowner, me. A friend of mine was moving out of his rented house due to a problem with the landlord. Before he left, he rolled back the carpet in the lounge and drew an intricate pentagram in red paint. Let it dry, then rolled the carpet back. He said he spent a good 3 hours drawing it. Edit. That's just reminded me of when I moved rooms in uni and the previous occupant had written notes for me everywhere. Inside the drawers, he wrote, "My drawers." Under the rug, he wrote, "My floor." Inside the closet, he wrote, "Well, you get the picture." I didn't find the last one until a week before I moved out. It was under a loose bit of flooring. Not my house, but the school my friend worked at. A pipe had leaked and ruined a wall in the building, one of the oldest schools in the city. It was a beautiful property. Anyways, the pipe leaked, so they pulled down the ruined wall and behind the wall found a door. A fully furnished apartment was there, had a coal-burning stove to heat it. Early 1900s appliances and decor. It was for the caretaker of the school. My ex-wife's family knocked down a wall in a 400-year-old house in Cornwall and found a perfectly intact bedroom from the 1800s, still with all the personal effects where they had been left. Nobody knows why it was boarded up or why things weren't taken out of it. Oh, and that house always appears in the guides for the most haunted locations in Cornwall, if you believe that kind of stuff. Maybe someone in the bedroom died of typhoid or some other infectious disease, and they just decided to seal in shut rather than risk contamination. Or maybe they wanted to fuck with people in the future. Wait till they find this in 200 years, LMAO. My entire family tried to convince my brother to leave a plastic skeleton under his new porch before he sealed up the floor decking. He initially refused, but a few months later he told me he actually had. Some things never get old, LOL. My first house purchase in 2005 bought an old farmhouse that was built in 1923. The basement was filled with crap. We told them they needed to clean it all out before closing, but they didn't do it. The realtor asked if we wanted to postpone closing, and we decided no. Some of the stuff looked interesting enough. Maybe it will be worthwhile to go through. Most of it was just junk. Then, about halfway through, we were working our way from one end of the basement to the other because you could barely walk through. I went to pick up what I thought was a small box, only to quickly realize it weighed at least 75 pounds. Upon further inspection, it wasn't a box, but a wooden square, 4 inches wide and about 12 by 12 inches, with 2 thin masonite plywood covers on each side. On one edge were 2 bolts with wires coming off that had been cut. Very strange. I had no idea what it was, but thought it was interesting. So I put it aside and we kept going. At the very back of the basement, once we cleared everything else out, was a rickety gray cabinet built into the house. Inside were numerous strange small tools, vials of mercury, vials of a strange powder, and thousands, literally thousands, of dice blanks. Some actual dice, but mostly blanks without the dots. They were all in little boxes labeled dice blanks. Also very strange. Not too long after that, I met a guy, and upon learning my address, he said, "Can I come over? My best friend grew up in that house." He came by and proceeded to tell me stories for an hour and a half about his childhood best friend's eccentric father, someone who was a part of the Dixieland Mafia in the 60s and 70s, and who made a living traveling around the US as a traveling gambler. The enormously heavy box was an electromagnet, and the dice blanks were for him to make his own loaded dice with a little bit of metal powder under the inlaid dot, so he could set up his own table with the electromagnet underneath and turn it on when he wanted to persuade the dice. He told me many other stories, including that there was no doubt in his mind that he had killed someone. Pretty fascinating. This is my favorite in the thread so far. Wild stuff. It's not really weird, but I think it's kind of a nice story. One of the kids' rooms has a shelf going all around the top edge, and when my kid was putting stuff up there, they found a letter from the previous kid. The letter welcomed them to the room, etc., and asked them to take special care of a rose bush in the front yard. That was their special rose bush. My kid thought it was really cool to have that connection with the previous kid. How's the rose bush doing? My kid took care of it for several years, but TBH, it was never very healthy, and we finally had to take it out. Sad ending, I know. A glass bowl. It was kind of pretty with horizontal blue stripes. We kept fruit in it. We thought about dropping it off at the local charity shop, but never got around to it. Then one day, I was at an antique fair and I saw for sale glass bowls that looked almost identical to ours. I went home to get my bowl and brought it to be assessed. Turns out it was a vintage Aurifors crystal bowl. The assessor valued it at around $800. We no longer keep fruit in it. We no longer keep fruit in it. Why? The fruit increases the value. These assholes I bought a house from stuck a little skeleton figurine dressed up in a little monk's robe behind the exhaust vent in the furnace closet. Just about shit myself when I opened up that door, and there was this tiny skeletal hand poking out. I thought it was a fucking dead baby. We are remodeling a bathroom right now, and I found a skeleton mermaid to stick in the wall. Not scary, but when I redid the floor in my last house, I drew a huge wiener in Sharpie on the slab. Hopefully someone will get a chuckle. That's adorable. Dachshunds are my favorite. My ex-wife found, behind a drawer in a built-in cupboard, a lovely lockbox contained several nice pocket watches and family heirlooms. The great part was that with a little sleuthing, we found the son of the man who originally built that house and reunited these items to the family. Like, it was a wonderful experience from start to finish. That's awesome. Except for the ex-wife part. Sorry. That they wired a room by connecting the outlet with an extension cord inside the wall. Yeah, this is the kind of stuff I was looking for. Not mine, and it was a rental, but when some of my high school friends went off to college in the early 90s, they rented a house, and whoever lived there before hid weed all over the place. Probably about an ounce in total, but it was everywhere. Pull up the corner of the carpet, weed. On top of the refrigerator, weed. Back of the shelves in the hall closet, weed. Either they were the most forgetful stoners ever, or they did it as a surprise for the new residents. I did once hide a little weed for myself when I quit. I figured I'd find it in a few years and have a little fun. I still can't remember where I put it, and I've moved since then, so I've seen some shit. We were working on what was originally the Rocket Star Cafe in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It was owned by a raging alcoholic piece of shit absentee slumlord. Our job was to clean it up and turn it into a new cafe and computer shop. As anyone who ever hung out at the Rocket Star knows, the old hardwood floors were bouncy and mushy, just about everywhere in the entire front room. Every week there would be a band up front by the windows towards the street, and a packed crowd of sweaty students stomping, bouncing, and swaying all the way to the back. The music was good, the weed was cheap, and getting a blowjob in the back room of the Rocket Star was a rite of passage for half the freshman class of any given year. But now that was all closed down. We had a summer to clean the fuck out of this place, fix the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC, the floors, and build a new business that was scheduled to be open come September. We worked 12-hour days through the summer heat. It was a job I'd never forget. The floors, we soon discovered, weren't just soggy and bouncy. They were rotting to shreds. We went down into the dirt floor basement and looked up overhead with a flashlight. The entire underside of the floor was white, green, black, gray, and tan. It was everything but wood. In fact, you could barely see any wood at all. It was completely covered in mold. In most places, it was over a quarter-inch thick. I'd never seen anything like it. Without a moment of hesitation or reservation, I said, "This goes right now, all of it." And we all shifted from that easy introductory phase of any new job site into action. One team went low with masks, gloves, putty knives, and buckets. They started scraping off the mold. The other team went high with crowbars and rage and started ripping off floorboards. We all filled dumpsters. It was disgusting, but in 2 days we had the flooring stripped off down to the open joists and could really see what the situation was. The situation was, we needed a hell of a lot of new floor joists. These were sponge. The only thing holding this floor up was habit. We spent a week replacing joists and airing out the building. The air was thick, musty, and smelled like a peat bog. One by one, we ripped out the stubbed ends of the rotten old joists, half of the center spans of which had just crumbled away. One by one, we replaced all of them with fresh, new pieces of lumber. The entire process took us a week and a half in the blistering summer heat. For the first few days, there was so much humidity from the basement as it dried out that the windows on the front of the building would be covered in condensation if we left the doors closed too long. And then something miraculous happened. Something none of us expected. The basement floor did something quite remarkable. It sprouted. The entire basement floor was just a generic, boring Michigan basement with a dirt floor. We never thought anything of it. The previous tenants never went down there. And until the day we discovered the mold, neither did we. But now, that dingy dirt floor had turned green. Hundreds of tiny little green shoots had appeared, because for the first time in forever, since we'd ripped out the floor, there was sunlight down there, and lots of it. We had to go explore this, so we all went down and checked it out. While we were down there, I noticed an old furnace boiler sitting, half sunken into the floor off to the side of the stairs. It was a rusted hulk, and someone was going to tear open a leg on it if we left it there, so I asked a couple guys to haul it off to the dumpster. It was while they were removing it that they discovered it was sitting on a concrete base about 2 feet down under the furnace. They asked me what to do about it, and I went to get a look. I grabbed a shovel and hopped into the hole. I was standing on the concrete base with the dirt around me coming up mid-thigh, and I started digging around the edges. I wanted to see how big the base was so we could determine if we should remove it or not. I couldn't find an edge in the 5 minutes I was prepared to fuck with it, so I asked the guys to just dig until they hit the edge and then let me know. I told them to put the dirt in a 5-gallon bucket or two and just empty it out in the dumpster. No big deal. I went back to working on the floor joists and didn't think anything of it. A couple hours later, one of them walked past me carrying a bucket and my mental clock gave me a, "What the hell?" So I followed him down. The concrete pad was now about 10 feet square. What the fuck? The basement boys were very happy when we mobilized the entire crew. We all teamed up and everyone started filling or hauling buckets of dirt out to the dumpster. Everywhere we dug, there was smooth concrete underneath. Eventually, we got to the walls and confirmed our suspicion. It turns out the basement didn't have a dirt floor. The basement had a complete concrete floor. Some stupid fuck had filled the entire basement with dirt. But why? The building had been a cafe of some sort for years and years. Well, restaurants are required to have a special type of drain with an air gap. The upstream pipe just stops for a couple inches and drains into a larger diameter piece of pipe below. You'll see air gap drains all over the place in restaurants because the vast majority of the time they work just fine. This one, however, did not. The downstream line had clogged at some point and the upstream never got the message. Nobody ever went down into the basement. The landlord never came to inspect anything. The management changed with the seasons and nobody ever really gave a shit. So for years, it just quietly went on draining raw sewage onto the floor. We hadn't been shoveling dirt. We were shoveling composted human shit and restaurant waste. Together, we had hauled well over 300 buckets of human shit out of the basement of the Rocket Star. I had never felt like I needed a shower more than the day we figured that out. Our cafe never opened. We got out of there as fast as we could. The absentee drunk landlord sold the place to an even more evil cunt, a shady parasite with a mean streak, and a Jimmy Durante nose who runs a cash for books gig, scamming broke college kids. We got out of there and never looked back. The only thing holding this floor up was habit. Brilliantly told, thank you. Thanks for watching. Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.